consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself, and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I'll be taking you beyond the veil this evening. I'm not joined by my lovely wife and co-host, Mrs. Gio. She's not feeling good today. We've been infected with this damn virus that has been lingering. It's been like 2 freaking weeks now. I'm not very happy about this, but, you know, it is what it is, so we'll just ride through it. But I wanted to do a special broadcast this evening, or this afternoon, I should say, with Nick Bravo, who had some interesting revelations on his ayahuasca experience recently, just yesterday, regarding Enki and the return of Enki. Why is Enki coming? On the last show, in case you missed it, which was actually a pretty raw show, I got a couple of emails and they're like, hey, I just tuned into BTV, love the content, but wow, was it raw? And I'm like, well, you chose to tune into the most raw show that we've done. And, you know, it is what it is. I've started to not take myself so seriously anymore and just kind of have fun with everything I'm doing. I mean, that's what it's all about. And that's what my messages essentially have been lately. You know, enjoy your life. You got to enjoy your life. You know, there's a lot of dogma out there and things like that and different paths of spirituality and all this. But all in all, I think what it comes down to is enjoying your life out there and also balancing that out with spirituality too. So that's very, very, very important. However, about a month and a half ago, Cherie had this experience where she encountered Enki, and I've encountered Enki a couple of times, a handful of times over the last 10 years. And I've come to understand that he's returning for one reason or another. And I don't know, on the last show, towards the end, the last hour, I was talking about how I'm kind of apprehensive about anything that comes in ships. You know, I've heard it over and over and over again. I've talked about the Zeta BS that we heard back in the early 2000s, which metamorphosized and transformed into the Palladians and the Arcturians, and, you know, it's the same stories being repeated over and over and over again. But, I mean, these were revelations, ayahuasca revelations, that Enki is indeed returning. I don't want to propagate or promote the repetition of the same nonsense that we've been hearing over the last 10 years, if that is the case. And I think the most important thing is to examine everything from a 360-degree perspective. This is what I have been talking about, using the discernment. The left brain is what the feminine aspect that it has to do with imagination, it has to do with gnosis, it has to do with feeling, understanding, and things like that. But the information also has to pass through the right brain, logical processor. And when the two are working together, that's discernment, in my opinion. And I think a lot of these ideas that we hear are good-hearted, but they lack the discernment. So that's what we're doing tonight, is discerning all of this information. And I think Nick's experiences, from the little bit that I heard, and I purposefully did this because I like to hear these things fresh, just like each and every one of you, because I want to be in the seat with you guys. Even though I'm here, you know, in front of the microphone, I still want to be in the seat with each and every one of you, hearing it for the first time. So Nick Bravo has some awesome ayahuasca revelations that we're going to get into here in just a moment on Beyond the Veil. So we'll be right back.
A traveler. The purpose of your consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together, and that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now, your conductors, and fear no danger, as you
I've talked about AI manifestations in the hyperspace realm, which is something that it took me years to really discern and really understand the idea that when we travel into these hyperspace realms, we're seeing two things. We're seeing elements of our own consciousness. We are encountering unlocking programs and things like that, but at the same time, there are malevolent information out there. Everything is just information. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to say entities or beings or anything like that. We'll just call it AI information, code out there, computer code. Joe Rogan was just recently did a show with Alex Jones, and I've been very critical of Alex because I've come a long way from that kind of truther mentality. I've seen, the other side of the coin and looked at things from a 360-degree perspective. And through the course, I've realized that a lot of that first-level politics stuff, yeah, it's interesting to look at, but it's not the focus of things. All it did was just create fear within me and all that stuff. I see T-Fetch is in the house too, and T-Fetch disagreed with the vegetarian stuff that I was talking about on the last show. And I just want to say I really, really, really appreciate when people disagree. You know why? Because it raises discussion. And that's what it's all about. I don't have all the answers. I'm telling you my perspective. You bring your perspective to the table, then we can see things from a 360-degree perspective. So that's the way to do things, man. I mean, this is what the whole journey is all about. But back to the Alex Jones thing. I realize that Alex is really onto something when he says that the quote-unquote elite, the scum of the earth, are interfacing with some kind of beings out there that have malevolent intentions. Now, 3 years ago, I just thought it was absolutely crazy, especially since Alex has never done DMT. I mean, that was the number one thing. It's like if he had come from a perspective of, hey, I've been working with DMT, here's my understanding. Okay, that's different. But it's very easy to dismiss somebody like Alex as somebody that doesn't have the experience. But when I came to the understanding myself through my DMT experiences, I realized that Alex has a lot more to offer, and he's a lot more on point than what he talks about on his show. So, on that note and in that spirit, Nick Bravo had a very interesting ayahuasca experience last night that he wants to share with us. And from my small understanding of the experience, it seems like this whole Enki arrival may indeed be an AI trap. I'm not sure. We'll get into it with Nick. Nick, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Can you hear the audio working?
Loud and clear, man. You're looking good, awesome. Too. So, awesome. I don't even know where to begin with this. I know that over the last year, I want to say this, I have seen a huge elevation in consciousness in yourself. You've been doing some hardcore work. I got to say that it is commendable. I respect that so much, and I knew it. I saw the light inside of you, and I was like, this guy is, gonna really just explode here in a little bit. And I'm so glad, because your journey has been freaking awesome. So do you want to start from the beginning, or do you want to talk about the ayahuasca experience last night? I mean, take us away on whatever you feel comfortable.
Okay, well, I think first of all, I'm going to set just a little bit of groundwork. What I've been working with a lot since 2014 is understanding the Kabbalistic tree of life, understanding the mythology, understanding and a lot of that stuff, those shattered vessels, they're still there. They're still floating around. It's out there.
You know what, Nick? Let me jump in for just a moment, because I'm going to call my cable company and really just let somebody have it. My internet just dropped again. So we missed everything that you said. So please start over with that.
Okay. So basically, I want to cover a little bit of groundwork. In 2014, I began studying the Zohar, the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, that kind of thing. Now, in that mythology, there were previous creations which did not work out. The energy of the divine numinous, whatever you call it, the pure light, was put into vessels, and the vessels shattered. They hung out, and it's what we would today call dark matter. And if you've studied astronomy, you know that a good 95% of what's out there in the universe is this dark matter. It's the stuff in between everything else. And the ayahuasca training that I had yesterday basically confirmed a couple of things for me. Number one, that it's conscious. There is, and that's kind of why I've always thought, maybe we're on a rescue mission, because there's things out there in that dark matter that they're conscious. They contain the pure light. They also contain the divine spark. Now, not equal. It's like, think of it as an ocean. If you throw a piece of meat into the ocean, you might get a little fish, you might get a great white. And the Anunnaki, what they're doing is they're trying to gather this dark matter. They're trying to gather the consciousness and the divine light and the divine spark and use it basically for energy as a resource. They use it like we use gasoline. The problem is this dark matter, it's conscious. It's conscious. And we've known about this for thousands of years. Anybody who's studied the occult, this stuff is conscious, but it's not. I've got like pages and pages of notes written down. It was such an intense experience that I'm still a little like, whoa, what the hell just happened?
Well, let me jump in. Let me jump in for a moment, because now that you say this, I'm having some interesting thoughts. So we had George Kavasalas on a couple of months ago, and he said something about Christ consciousness coming from the Greek word chryso, which is gold. Now you're talking about the Anunnaki harvesting consciousness. We have this whole idea, achieve Christ consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. If it does come from gold consciousness, that's the optimal level for harvesting if your hypothesis and analysis is correct about the Anunnaki. So holy shit, man, they may be harvesting us.
Yeah, that's basically what I got. The interesting thing is, on Friday night, I had one ayahuasca experience. I finally saw external hallucinations, which I saw shapes and images in the carpet. I saw energy weaving around. It was like just chaos. And I saw faces, I saw shapes, etc. Nothing frightening. But I could see how some of the things would be frightening to certain people. Last night, I thought it was like 2 in the afternoon. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do an Aya trip. I'm going to relax. I'm going to, maybe see some pretty things. And I got to tell you, brother, it kicked my fucking ass. It was so intense. Because whatever it was that I contacted wanted to do the work. And it's interesting because every time I've done Aya, I've gotten this image in my mind of a kitten being taken away from its mother before it's ready. And it really made me understand what was going on, because when the Anunnaki, when they scoop into this dark matter, they're just taking anything they can get. And basically the world is a processing plant. All this suffering, all this negativity, all this everything, it's for the sole purpose of harvesting the energy. They want the energy as quickly as they can get it. Now, I know a lot of people believe that Enki is this superhero. He's this savior. He's going to do these great things for us. And I'm kind of thinking it never really made any sense to me. And yet yesterday, when I encountered the entities that I encountered, they were familiar. It's like I had known them before. I knew them from somewhere else. And I mean, this stuff is just, I mean, I wrote down like notes and notes of it, but it's like, it's so hard to put into words because.
Well, you know what though, Nick? I'm picking up on all the energy that you're talking about. I can feel it. I can feel that there's something going on here. As you mentioned, Enki, the way that I see him is kind of like a grandfather kind of spirit. He backed out a long time ago. Yeah, he's not with the Anunnaki agenda. I always attribute these qualities of energy harvesting to Enlil. Enlil, aka Jehovah. You read the Bible, it's all about either fear, overly fear, or unconditional love while you're being tormented in fear of this entity. And I can see the energy harvesting going on with that. With Enki, though, it seems to be like he backed off, but maybe not. Maybe that is just an illusion.
Yeah, and I'd like that to be true, but I mean, if you read mythology, you would see that Enlil and Enki were constantly fighting, and what they wanted was they wanted the throne of Anu. They wanted the throne. They wanted to be chief. They wanted to be head of the company, and so Enlil completely failed. Now maybe Enki's saying, "Okay, wait a minute. I have a plan. I know how to get all the energy we need." Because the thing of it is these how do I say this? The different eras, they're basically batches of dark matter. We are one batch of dark matter. There have been ones previous, there's going to be ones after us. But the issue is, every time they get a batch, they do not know what they're dealing with. And one of the images that I got an image of this, it was a warehouse with all these pods, and they had this dark, swirling, oily, smoky substance in it. And there were a couple of dog-headed people standing around. There was a taper supervising them. But it was like they're trying to figure out what they can do to utilize the energy as quickly as possible without getting. They want that spark, but they want the consciousness to be removed from it, because they see the consciousness as a byproduct. They see it as, nothing important. And the entity that I contacted it literally discussed with me about how it had successfully consumed a couple of the Anunnaki. And it was, this thing was so powerful. It showed me how within the dark matter, there are things that are high divine light or high divine spark and low pure light. There are things that have high pure light and low divine spark. There's things that are just nearly insignificant, and there are things that if they chose to, they could pretty much wipe out any archon they chose to. Also, the Anunnaki are not the same thing as archons. Archons are something else. But the Anunnaki have been able to, either they discovered or stole some kind of time travel technology. These timelines that you're seeing are basically processing for the batches of energy. So what they do is they create different timelines because they're getting all that energy. And I was shown the math. I was shown what they're doing. It's highly complex, and it's like with the Egypt thing. It's too obvious. It's too obvious. And because the thing of it is the Anunnaki, they can so easily create an alternate timeline to achieve their goals. It gives them the power of foreknowledge. They know what's going to happen. They go back in time. They keep that from happening, or they make something different happen. So while we sit there and think, oh, we can change something in this timeline, all the Anunnaki have to do is go back and create another Mandela effect. And the issue is, with this current batch that we are now, they're having problems processing it. They did not expect this much intelligence to be within this batch. And that's given them a lot of problems. This is why they're dumbing us down. This is why they're chemically lobotomizing us. This is why they're frankly, they're frustrated. And this ship, whether it's Enki, maybe it is, again, I don't know. I always like to question these visions, question these observations that I'm having. But I suspect the ship is a cargo container looking for just basically going to bring all the energy on and then take it where they need it to go. These 5D light ships that, a lot of these new agers keep talking about, I also think those are some kind of like storage vessel.
So kind of like cargo ships, like they harness the energy. Yeah, I could feel the energy, but I never put it in words the way that you just did. But I was always very averse to those. I always felt like this whole ascension is a trap. Portals are going to open, people are going to go through, and it's not that portals are opening and people are going through. It's that consciousness is being sucked out. That could explain the level of NPCs too. Maybe it's that they've actually had their consciousness taken out from them, and so you just have biological computers just basically walking around without anything inside of it.
Yeah, well, and this is, and not to go too horribly dark, but this is one of the reasons they go after children so much, is because the older you get, the more conscious you become, the more awake you become, the more wise and experienced you become. You can have the knowledge, but if you don't have the experience, you can't really do anything with it. Once you gain the experience, you can actually do something. Children have the divine spark, they have the pure light, but they don't have the experience. And plus they're mind wiped. So then they're easily lied to, they're easily frightened, they're easily manipulated. And that's why these things continue to go after the children. Because the thing of it is you can harvest energy from a human over a long period of time. You'll get more of it, but it takes a lot longer to process. Whereas when they go after children, what they're doing is they're getting a concentrated burst of that energy. Now, it's my thinking that they're going after the burst of energy because they're running out of something. They're getting desperate. And I think a lot of it is that they're one species. They're physical like we are, but they're on a different frequency. And because they have time travel technology, the average person goes, oh, they must be gods. They're not gods. They're the narcissistic ass clowns of the world, of the universe. I mean, they're just, because the thing of it is with these animal-headed entities that you've seen a couple of times and other people have seen, I'm not sure if those are other species from different worlds that are employed by them, for want of a better term, or enslaved. I'm really not sure what those are, but it was very interesting seeing those dog-headed beings.
Well, let me jump in for a minute, Nick. I hate to say it, but everything's resonating hardcore. Everything that you're saying, it's making sense, and it's making me question a lot of the things that I thought I knew. I haven't called it gnosis, just let's call it my thoughts and I suspected that there were some things, and you're making me question a lot of that. So this is really amazing stuff. You talk about the ritualistic sacrifices. I've seen that in the ayahuasca realm. I understand how that energy is harvested. The point is to keep the victim, and it's usually a very, very small child, in that state of terror, because it allows the soul or consciousness to levitate above the body. That's when they're able to get it, and then it goes back into the body, comes back out, and they try to keep it at that state without breaking the tether as long as possible, until finally, boom, they break the tether. But there's something about the way that they're harvesting the energy that gives them more power. Maybe when the consciousness goes back into the body, it creates more power and then leaves the body again. I don't know how it works, but I've seen these rituals in the ayahuasca realm. And so people look into my eyes and they're like, hey, there's something wrong with that guy. It's like, yeah, I've seen some shit. That's the look in my eyes, because I've seen all this in the Aya realm.
Yeah. one of the things that one of the lessons that whatever entities were there, I hesitate to call them demons. They're not. It's like the thing of it is most people, when they see anything they can't control or they don't understand, they're going to call it a demon, a monster, or whatever. These things are wildlife, but they're no more dangerous than anything else in a jungle or a forest. I mean, yeah, if you get too close and mess up, they're going to eat you, but typically they want to be left alone. One of the big things is also we have to make the darkness conscious. There is a certain degree of intelligence there. There is a certain level of awareness there, but then again, it varies so widely. You might reach in there into the abyss, into the chaos. You might pull something out that's no smarter or harmful than, a little hamster. You might reach in again, and you're going to pull out something that's going to bite your hand off. If you're lucky, there's powerful entities in there. And I honestly think that a lot of people, the thing of it is though, it's like these entities, they're trying to survive. And so I think a lot of, I'm not even sure how to say this, like there's good reptilians, there's bad reptilians, there's good, bad of everything and anything. And a lot of it is we have to make the darkness conscious, but also we have to recognize that the way the Anunnaki were able to tap into it, as far as this world, as far as humanity, whatever, they were able to merge their DNA with whatever species was already on this planet, but then they merged it with some of the dark matter that was already present. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, there's a lot of entities here that have that divine spark, both human and non-human. But the Anunnaki want it, they demand it, they're begging for it. I recall one time on Frank Castle's show, he was talking about how he did Aya with a guy, and the guy energetically looked like a white praying mantis. So there are entities out there that are non-human, that are benevolent, they are good intentioned, they have the empathy, they have the truth, they have the wisdom, etc. But they don't have the experience, they don't grow, they're not growing. I don't want to read off this whole thing, but it's just like, just the ideas were flowing so much.
No doubt. The information is flowing so well. That's why I haven't really been jumping in, but I have, a ton of thoughts on the situation. I've been apprehensive about any entities. I'm sure from listening to the show and being in the chat room constantly with us. And for that very reason. There very well could be benevolent out there, but we have to save ourselves. That's what it comes down to. We are the ones that have to do the work. We're here on the front lines. So, and these other entities are so manipulative as well. It's very easy to manipulate a consciousness, especially at the beginning of the journey, which is where everybody encounters the entities right at the beginning, and they're steered in one direction or another. And so what are these entities' intentions? Here I am 10 years into my ayahuasca experiences, still questioning entities, still questioning Enki, still questioning all of that. You had mentioned earlier that there was a struggle between Enlil and Enki. And yes, I just want to make this point. Enki was born of a concubine. He was older than Enlil. However, Enlil was born to the queen. That's where the big controversy comes in, because the throne was supposed to go to Enki, but since he was born of a concubine, he got skipped over. So that's the background in history as far as that goes. Yeah,
I think a lot of it is they're manipulating. The Anunnaki, they are manipulative, they are opportunistic, they are looking to do whatever they can to manipulate to their advantage. They don't have empathy the way we do. They don't have love the way we do. as far as whether or not they have pure light, as far as consciousness, I don't know. I mean, I'm leaning towards no, because the thing of it is, it's like you look at somebody with narcissism. It looks like they may have it all figured out, but if you look under the hood, so to speak, they're a complete wreck. They've got the anxiety, they've got the insecurity, they've got the fear, they've got the trauma, and they've chosen not to deal with it. And this is why making the darkness conscious is so important, because once you're integrated, once you've taken the masculine energies, the feminine energies, the positive and the negative, you combine those two through a proper conduit, you can, for want of a better term, express Christ consciousness. And once you do that, you can defeat the Anunnaki, defeat anything. Because the archons, they don't have the divine spark either. So,
no. The way I understand archons is they're just programs in the system. They're kind of like I think the ancients called them the Watchers. They're under all of this, and they've been running out of control. Yeah. They're also harvesting energy too, but for their own little agendas. Yeah,
with the octopus thing, I mean, it reminds me of just like a machine used to. You ever see those milking machines on cows?
They've got
like this. So they're coming at the cow's udder with like several tubes, but it's the same machine. And then all they're doing is going to every entity they can to basically suck the energy. And so they want all that negative energy so that they can just start sucking it up. And that's why they keep wanting us to have war with each other. That's why they keep wanting us to be divided, because if we all became consciously aware of our own power and made the darkness conscious that's within ourselves and trained it, we would be unstoppable. And the archons know it, and the Anunnaki know it, and that's what they're afraid of. I kept getting the impression that whoever this Jasmine person you're supposed to reach out to do this stuff, she's going to have the gift of foreknowledge, but and the only reason she's going to have that is because she's been able to make the darkness conscious within her. Because there's a lot of people in our society who, you see this in like some branches of occultism where they're Luciferian or they're Satanist and they're dressing weird and they've got their tattoos and whatever. But again, you look under the hood and they're completely unaware or unconscious. They don't have any real control or understanding of their own darker aspects. They don't have any, they've not journeyed into the abyss and come out the wiser for it. They've just, they're just playing a role. They're playing pretend. And that's, our whole species, we're becoming so emotionally immature that when shit does hit the fan, a lot of people are not going to be able to handle it. They're going to panic. They're going to freak out. They're going to just like go crazy, etc. Because we're not doing this. We're not dealing with it the way it needs to be dealt with. And the question is, how do we deal with it? Well, we deal with it by accepting our own power, acknowledging our own power, taking responsibility, taking back our free will, not giving it up, not begging for masters, becoming our own masters. Somebody who's narcissistic cannot do that. Somebody who is, just borderline can't do that. Somebody who is so Machiavellian or psychopathic, it's not even that they won't do that, it's they can't do that. They literally cannot do that. They know how to play the game, they know how to manipulate, but they don't know how to actually solve any problems.
That makes sense. I'm taking care of a couple of things on TFR real quick as we're chatting, but so you mentioned something that kind of flew by me, but I think I understand what you're saying. You mentioned something about Jasmine. Jasmine was a girl that I knew when I was, young, but and then I find that I'm meeting a whole bunch of Jasmines now. The girl that I'm referring to, that I've been referring to, hasn't been. Her name's not Jasmine. However, what you said after that really is just in line with everything that's going on. So can we jump back a couple of steps, and can you elaborate a little bit more on your thoughts on that subject?
Yeah. Well, these entities, I was letting them speak. This is another thing. This is why I wasn't entirely sure of who and what they were, because a lot of times when I do the first state that I get into, I start wanting to say words that I don't understand what they are. It does feel a little bit like possession. It kind of freaks me out a little bit, but I got the sense that these things, I got the sense not necessarily that I was one of them, but definitely that they were connected to me. As far as Jasmine or whoever, I kept getting the name Jasmine. I kept getting the name Michelle. I kept getting other names, and it was just like, there were definitely a couple of times when I'm talking to the main entity, other little things came in and decided to just screw around, and it was just had to tell them to leave. It's just a lot of these things, they are tricksters. A lot of them are highly intelligent. A lot of them are not. So that's always a big concern with me. Is okay, am I being manipulated by these things? Are these things lying? Are they screwing around? What are they doing? What's their purpose? Because honestly, yesterday I thought that I was going to have a nice, relaxing trip where I was just going to, feel good and just see some images. And it was just and on Friday night when I did it, I didn't have much connection to anything, but I kept seeing Quetzalcoatl type dragons, serpents, that kind of a thing. I think a lot of what it is that we have to, when we activate the divine spark, when we reach that point of Christ consciousness, we have to not give in. And I think that's one big problem with why a lot of people are frustrated with Christianity, for example, because if you look at the cross, it forms a box. And what does the AI, what do the Anunnaki want? They want that spark of divinity. They want that Christ consciousness in a box so that it can't release the divine spark.
Well, let me, before we get too far off the subject, it's funny you mention all this right now, because literally right before the show, as a matter of fact, that's why, we'd said 30 minutes and then it took me about an hour instead of 30 minutes, because I was talking to this girl, and the conversation that we were having was, I'm sorry for being absent over the last couple of years, but you needed to go through the darkness yourself. You needed to learn how to untangle yourself from the octopus, because this is going to be vital at this next site. And I'm so sorry for being away, but you had to go through all of this, which is essentially what you're describing right now, which just kind of blew me away when you said all this, because I'm like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? So you definitely picked up on an energy that is very real and that's there.
And I think a lot of it is sometimes the darkest parts of ourselves are that which will lead to the most virtue and nobility. I mean, it's like, if you don't know how to defend yourself, you're going to get eaten. And what does our society do? Our society says, don't defend yourself. Pray, rely on the government, rely on a church, rely on everybody else. Don't save yourself, don't defend yourself, etc. Well, any animal that does that is going to get eaten. And that's what the Anunnaki do. They want to eat us. Basically, they want to destroy the divine spark. And you have to ask yourself, okay, without the divine spark, what are we? Without the consciousness, what are we? And those things in the abyss, they're just, they're incomplete. They're incomplete. just like those vessels, just like the Sephiroth, when the energy goes in, the healthy right thing to do was for them to grow, eventually divide, and keep growing. But that dark matter, it's stagnant. It looks like swirling chaos, but it's stagnant in the sense that it's not growing, because it needs that 3D experience. Every time I interact with these things, they want to spend more time. They're just, they're fascinated by just the basic third dimensional things that kind of gross us out. It's like if you get like a runny nose under Aya, I've noticed this with myself. It's like my nose will run, and it's like, oh, I'll wipe it, but then it's like part of me just kind of wants to like feel it and be like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And it's like, it's those entities asking, what is this? What is this third dimensional realm? Because the thing of it is the third dimension, it's bondage, but it's also providing order. And these entities in the abyss, they don't have order. They don't have, there's no stability whatsoever. We have to give them that stability. But then at the same time, we have to treat them with kindness. We have to integrate them because they've been rejected. They've been pushed away. We have to integrate them. Now, as far as...
let me ask you this. So how does integrating them help the situation? You talked about making the darkness conscious. So how does that help to, I guess, maintain our own consciousness, prevent us from being harvested, thwart the Anunnaki's plans?
Well, I'm sure you've seen the meme on Facebook. I'm sure I'll probably butcher the wording, but it's the most danger. How is it? Something like I'm going to butcher the wording, but basically the idea is a real man is somebody who's capable of extreme violence, but knows when to use it and when not to use it. And that's really what it is that darkness is the power, but the light is knowing when to use it, when not to use it, how much to use it. Because these things in the abyss, they're just out of control. They can't even control themselves. But it's up to us because of our levels of conscious. They have intelligence, but they're not conscious, which is a difficult concept to understand. And I mean, I'm just like, how can you have consciousness but not intelligence, or vice versa? Is this making sense? Because I mean, I'm still not too clear on. It
is. I mean, I energetically, it's making a lot more sense, but I too am having a difficult time putting it into words, as I'm sure you are as well. Because it's just the nature of Aya. You feel it and you have to see it for yourself, but trying to vocalize it and put it into words is a lot more difficult at times. But I mean, we're getting into some really, really, really heavy and deep understandings here. Yeah. So, on that note, let's take a quick break because I want to ask you about Quetzalcoatl on the other side and, your understanding of this. I want to ask you about Thoth, who is one of Enki's sons. Is he a helper? Is he something else? I want to get your views on all of this. So, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we will be right back. And trying to find a little break clip here. Okay, screw it. We'll just play this one.
and circumscribe your desires. As we travel upon the level of time, to that undiscovered state of consciousness, traveling to a place where once attained, no time returns. The place of your consciousness which awaits us when we are past.
All right, jumping back into it, Nick Bravo is our guest this afternoon, I should say. And the discussion that we're getting into is very, very, very deep. We're really putting a lot of these characters into their proper perspective, or into a different perspective, I should say. Because I don't want to pass judgment 100% right now, but I can tell you this, the information is definitely resonating, and I'm definitely interested in hearing more about this journey. You know, one of the things that I've been interested in is Freemasonry. We've had Robert W. Sullivan on many, many times before. And we've talked about the acacia and the importance of the acacia in Freemasonry and Christianity, and literally everywhere in Egypt you find the acacia. And I suspected that Masonry was built upon the artificial intelligence, and that's the grand architect, is this artificial intelligence octopus. I came across this interesting motif right here, and this motif that I have here on the screen is from a book called The Origin of Freemasonry and the Knights Templar, which I found very, very interesting. Obviously, other people are picking up on this as well, and they're encountering this AI octopus. So just kind of a side note there, but I would say that when I sought out this journey to really understand the origins of Masonry, what Freemasonry is all about, I think I can say for sure, at least modern Freemasonry, may have not been the case back during the Egyptian mystery schools, but without a doubt, modern Freemasonry, this is the grand architect right here. So just an interesting side note there. Let's get back to our guest, Nick Bravo. I want to ask you about these other characters. You mentioned Quetzalcoatl. You know, obviously Thoth comes to mind because Thoth is one of Enki's sons. Marduk, of course, is the big one. And I've always been very, very apprehensive of Marduk. Enlil and Marduk have had energies and characteristics that, in my opinion, were interchangeable, both domineering, both wanting to harvest energy, all of that. Enki comes from two words, En and Ki. Ki is what Earth was, En is Prince. That Enki is actually a title, Prince of the Earth. His title was stripped from him because he told the humans, at least according to the Lost Book of Enki, he told the humans that there was going to be a flood, and to prepare for the flood, and the council stripped him of his title. He became known as the Prince of Darkness. Somebody asked earlier on Facebook, is Enki Lucifer? And I would say yes. The two energies are very similar. Both have similar stories. The serpent, Enki, from what I can tell, is a serpent. It's not really written in any of the tablets, but it's a gnosis that I came across in my ayahuasca experiences that I'm also finding out. If you type in Enki and serpent, you'll find a lot of other people on the esoteric spiritual levels talking about Enki being a serpent, which or a flying serpent. You know, you have the cobra with the wing motif, which I think we used for the thumbnail of the show. So, you know, I've seen Enki in a different perspective, kind of outside and demonized by the other Anunnaki. Marduk definitely has an agenda to fuck us over. I mean, that's the best way that I can say it. What about his other children? Thoth, other people like that. What are your thoughts?
As far as Thoth, you know, information is a good thing if you know what to do with it. If you don't know what to do with it, it can be a hindrance because it can paralyze you. As far as Quetzalcoatl, I've never tried to contact that entity. I don't get any kind of negative feelings from it, but I've never contacted it. I have tried to contact Marduk. I think I came into contact with Marduk once. And yeah, the energy is exactly what you were mentioning. It's just this nasty, horrible little thing. And
there was in the Lost Book of Enki, there was a fallout. Marduk detonated some weapons. He destroyed Sumer. They all went after him for it. He went to the pyramids. He hid in the king's chamber. They couldn't get into the pyramid in the king's chamber because it was such a maze. They had to blast a hole in the side. They finally got Marduk out. And then at the end, Enki said, look, this is my son. Let him go and I'll leave. And he kind of went into exile after that. But it kind of shows two sides to Enki. Like, you have the very compassionate side as well. And I mean, sometimes even overly compassionate to the detriment of himself. By going against the council, and then to the detriment of everybody else by standing for this rotten seed, which was Marduk. At least according to the tablets, which I think Marduk is playing a big role in fucking us over at this point. But, anyways, those are my thoughts. So please continue.
Well, if you've ever researched the Necronomicon, within occultism, I mean, everything in the abyss exists pure potential.
Fantastic. Hey, if you can still hear me, Nick, hold on. The freaking internet dropped again. I'm so. All right, there you go.
Yes, okay, I can hear you.
Hold on, we're back. Okay, so start that thought over because the internet dropped again.
Okay, so the abyss is anything that can exist, could be, would be, will be, everything that exists in the chaos. So once a human being pours intention into it, you can actually create things. Because these things will literally, if they resonate with what you're trying to contact, they will literally mix and merge and flow together. So if somebody tries to summon Cthulhu or some entity out of a book, even if it's imaginary, these things, these forces within the abyss will merge, and you can get tulpas, you can even get gods, you can get monsters, you can get anything out of there. I did experiment with the Necronomicon several years ago. Marduk he's a pain in the ass. He's an idiot. And I mean that sincerely, he's an idiot. Cthulhu, you could summon him up. I don't expect you to, because a lot of these things will do as you tell them to do, as is their nature, and it's you giving them, it's you programming them, right? So you can, they exist, but they exist primarily as potential. You can create them. That you can get tulpas, you can, etc. Now, as far as Quetzalcoatl, it just, it confuses me why people always want to make this like either black and white. It's either completely good or it's completely evil. The reality of it is that in order to have Christ consciousness or whatever, you have to integrate the light and darkness. You have to be, yes, you can be the loving Jesus or the benevolent Thoth or Quetzalcoatl, but there's sometimes where you need to pull that sword and you need to be the biggest, baddest, vicious entity you can be. And that's just the way it is. That's natural law.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And a lot of the philosophies, the modern philosophies, don't understand that. It's about light, 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 ignore the dark. But no, we need to master the darkness. And it's all really relative too, though, because we take a look at our cats, for example. A lot of people have cats. They love their cats. They think their cats are so beautiful, spiritual animals and all of this, and they're spirit helpers. Well, to a mouse, that cat is a devil. Because, yeah. or try to give a cat a bath. Yeah, you'll see how quickly it turns there. But it's relative. The point that I'm getting at is, to a mouse, that cat is the devil because it chases them all around the house, and that's, the big adversary there. So realistically, it is all relative.
Yeah. Well, and also you have to look into context, and that's one of the problems with our society right now is, and even with the legal system, people don't want to look at context. They don't want to have to think. They want it to be paint by number, not have to think, not take responsibility for their decisions. But that doesn't work. You have to look at the context. You know, what is the context? And we're losing that in our society. And without context, you cannot give form to anything. It's just going to be this swirling mass of potential, but you're not going to be able to make any sense of it because you need the context.
Huh. Interesting. So, I mean, I don't even know where to go from this point because there's just so many different thoughts on the subject. I guess the big question is the AI, most definitely a machine. As a matter of fact, I started pulling up this picture here earlier, and I wanted to put it on the screen. It's a technology for sure. I mean, when I saw it, it was clearly a machine. The question is, you know, in the future or in other technologies, do we use organic components? As you know, can we create an organic component and make a machine that's kind of organic?
I saw an article on Facebook today. One of my friends, Barry Hess, he posted a link to an article about how they can manufacture human skin now to help burn patients heal faster. It's a completely it's a machine that can create skin. And it functions as skin. I'm not sure if it's actually skin, but it's close enough. And so when you look at what they can do with technology, they're getting more and more able to create something that can masquerade as human and not be human. As far as the octopus, you're talking about a device that can inject things as well as take things out. So it's this constant connection of just like people with their smartphones and their other electronic devices. It's constantly feeding them something, and then they're constantly responding by giving it their attention, their focus, etc.
That's true. That's true. On the screen, I have CERN.
Yeah.
It looks like the bottom of an octopus.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. There's as far as the Christ consciousness things, what's really interesting though, is like a few weeks ago I was reading a book called I forget what it was called, but it was along the lines of Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism, and it talked about mind, body, spirit, right? So I have like I got two books I copied off the PDFs of like this is Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barton. And what's interesting though is a lot of this stuff, especially the older stuff, you look at it and then you read contemporary self-help stuff, it's the same stuff. It literally is the same stuff. It's just worded differently. The problem is most people are not taking action because they think somebody's going to save them. They think their government's coming to save them. They think their Jesus is going to come save them. They think anybody and everything is going to come save them, and that's not how the world works, unfortunately. And with this rise in societal narcissism, this lack of empathy and whatnot, you know, we're seeing civilization to a certain degree falling apart. And I hate to say that, but unless people start taking responsibility for their own lives and start taking serious action in the real world, or this world at least, it's not going to change.
That's true. That is true. People have to take personal responsibility, and that's what they're afraid of. And I think that's why we have so much prevalent BS, belief systems, or bullshit, any way you want to look at it, because they're waiting for somebody else to do the work, portals to open, ETs to come in, et cetera, et cetera. And this opens everybody up to energy harvesting. I mean, we've got energy harvesting all up and down the line, whether it's the bombardment from the mainstream media. You know, I mentioned Alex Jones earlier. And I realized that I used to listen to Alex Jones 24 hours a day sometimes. I would fall asleep and just have Alex Jones just playing. And I was in such a negative fear frequency. And I stepped away for a long time. I mean, I'll even step away from Facebook right now. I stepped away from Facebook for 2 months just a few weeks ago. And when I came back, it was the exact same bullshit as when I left. Nothing had changed. It didn't matter whether I was there or not. Nothing had changed. It's still the same bullshit. The only difference is that I changed by disconnecting myself from all of that and focusing within instead of without.
Yeah. Well, and the thing of it is that, you know, a lot of people are addicted to that fear porn. They're addicted to the drama. They're addicted to that. And the thing of it is, the problem is the drama, it's a distraction. It's a distraction to keep you from solving the real problem. You know, it's like with this Egypt thing. It's like, oh, look, the headdress is different. That's a distraction. It's so obvious in your face that it's like, and this is another thing. This is another point that I need to bring up with the Anunnaki. What they like to do with the timelines, what they like to do is they like to shove your past failures in your face. They like to rub it in your face. You may have almost defeated them in a timeline. You may have defeated them in another timeline. But if they've been able to get back into their time machine or whatever the hell they use to change the timeline, they want to shove that in your face. They want to rub it in your face because they're so insecure and they're so arrogant that they need to display and gloat about the fact that they conquered you or beat you or something. It's like the stereotypical villain who sits there and goes on and on and on instead of just pulling the trigger. Because these things are so fucking insecure, they have to gloat. That's their weakness. Their arrogance is their biggest fucking weakness.
I have noticed that. I mean, it's fear. You know, kind of funny, and I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying this, but there were a lot of people that were pissed off about the last show that we did, which was the sex magic, and we were talking about masturbation, we were talking about all this stuff. But I assure you, you know, if we were to do a show about child sexual abuse, those very same people who were saying that's disgusting and all this, they would be cheering for us. And it's like, well, we're talking about loving light stuff here, and you want to hear the darkness and the most horrible things because that's how people have been trained, because they love that fear porn. It's almost intoxicating to a certain point. Yeah.
With the like the way, and I hate to sound like I'm like lecturing or being mean, but I think a lot of activists really need to pull their head out of their ass and start actually getting more involved in this world. I hate calling this the real world, but for so many it is. It's like you want to change the laws in your state, put on a suit, get your good arguments set up, make an appointment to talk to your councilman, talk to your legislator, talk to your senator, get laws changed. I mean, I've called so many legislators' offices within the past couple of weeks, and it's like a lot of them were surprised that, you know, who's this person calling us? Why is he, you know? And it's like, hey, let's solve the problem. I mean, we got one dumbass governor here who's so anti-marijuana, anti-hemp. But then the minute he figures out that he can make money from it, what does he do? Switches over. Oh, yeah, I'm all for hemp and the hemp industry, only because he makes money off it.
It's all corrupt, man. Let me tell you what happened at the little town that we lived in before. They were opening up a plant that was going to destroy basically, you know, the air quality, the land, you know, all of this stuff. And we were having meetings on how to stop this and all this. We found out that the mayor had actually bought the land and he was going to sell it to this company. And that's why they were pushing all this through, because the mayor owned the land and he was making millions of dollars on the transaction. Fucking bastards. This is the way it works.
There's people in California who are doing serious prison time for things that are now legal in California. And it's like, I talked to a friend of mine who's a probation officer. She's like, he doesn't get it either. It's like some of these people are on probation or they're felons because of something that's no longer illegal. Well, then expunge their records. And it's like, you ask legislators about it and they're offended because, well, that impugns the character of the legal system. It's like, your legal system doesn't have a character to impugn. It's a fucking, laws typically are the preferences of the powerful. That's all they are. And it's like anybody who's gone through the legal system, been through the legal system, they have no respect for it because it's shown that it's not respectable. It's like you got this idiot legislator, Cortez or whatever her name is, you know, the media is showing her as the hypocrite that she is. And this is what these people do. They want rules for everybody else, but not for themselves. They want to skirt by with, you know, they want the pleasures, but they don't want the consequences. They don't want the responsibility, but they want the power. And this is why it circles back to giving up the free will. You give up the free will, you're giving up your consciousness, but you're also letting anybody who is powerful enough to take that divine spark, you're letting them do it. Once you have the free will, because I mean, you read that Bible, that trash novel, it's God gave you free will. You hear this from fucking pastors all the time. God gave you free will so that you can give your free will back to God.
Well, it's the same shit with government too. Like the government gives you all these rights and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. No. Rights are given to us by our creator, whoever we believe that is. You know, you mentioned that people in California are in jail for things that are legal now. And it's a travesty. I mean, Mark Emery was a guy in Canada, never stepped foot in the United States. He was selling cannabis seeds. We had his wife on the show right when he got arrested, and we were supposed to have an interview with Mark, but they wound up transferring him before the interview. We had already set it up. I mean, we had everything cleared. We had it cleared with the warden, you know, all of that stuff. But the state stepped in and moved him. Anyways, so he was selling seeds. And he did his time here in the state of Washington, in a federal prison here in the state of Washington. Canada extradited him. While at the same time, the state of Washington had legal cannabis. Washington, D.C. has legal cannabis. That's another thing. It's legal. In Washington, D.C., cannabis is recreationally legal. So the people that are telling us that federally it's illegal have it legal within their own little sphere. It's some bullshit.
Well, and Joe Rogan recently interviewed, I forget the guy's name, but he's written a couple of books on drug addiction and stuff. The guy who started the drug war back in the 1930s was an
Harry Esslinger.
Avowed anti-Semite, avowed racist, avowed whatever.
Well, his whole reasoning, one of his propaganda pieces was that cannabis makes white women want to date black men. This was one of his talking points.
And it's like this is the problem. If you look at the legal system, it's a religion. It's a religion. The reason they don't want to strike down any law is because they want to act like the law is this or that person's legacy. It's like, fuck their legacy. Do what's ethical. And it's like I've had so many people who it's just insane what they do. It's like I've talked to people in the legal field, and I've said, you do realize that this law is unethical, and they're like, well, I can't do anything about it. And it's like, the thing of it is you see all this. This is what pisses me off about the activist community and the truther community. They're so fucking worried about shit they can't fucking deal with, that they can't have no control over, but they don't. I mean, I swear to God, put on a suit and a tie, go into your legislator's office and give them a dressing down verbally. That's all you got to fucking do. That's all you got to do. I actually snuck into an Obama speech back in Phoenix, back in like early 2000s, because I put on a suit. I started talking to some of the guys who were being allowed to go in there, and I just walked in with them. I got within 10 feet of at the time, President Obama. Why? I wore a suit and I carried myself like I deserved to be there. You see all these activists today, they're babbling about Planet X or whatever, and it's like they're not taking any action to change the world that they're currently in.
That's true. That is true.
It's like, have the balls to stand. I mean, you know, Christ himself said to the Philistines, fuck off. We need to start doing that to our politicians, and we're not doing it.
Right.
And yeah, they made Socrates drink poison, and Plato bowed under it because he didn't want to die. But it's like, at some point, I mean, look what's happening in France. I mean, at some point, the people have to come together and fight back. And the thing of it is, you know, the the abyss, the chaos in the abyss, the darkness, the whatever that is, that dark matter, those consciousnesses, those intelligences, etc. We passed through the birth canal. We made it through the initiation into the physical realm. Now, whether this realm is a prison, a cage, a play palace, who knows what, but we made it through the birth canal. Now it's our job to summon up those forces, tame them, manage them, put them into order, and use that power and strength in order to make this world into a paradise. I mean, in the Zohar, it talks about how our purpose here is to make this world into a paradise. In the Gnosticism, the more esoteric works in Gnosticism, basically become Christ, make this world into a paradise, and overthrow Yaldabaoth. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But it's like, as far as like going back in time or whatever, I mean, I don't know, because the thing of it is, though, is if you destroy the Anunnaki before they mess with us, we won't exist. But at the same time, I honestly feel like Egypt is that thing with King Tut. I feel like it's an it's a
distraction.
A distraction. Now,
it could be. It could be.
That to me was Egypt was freedom from Babylon. Babylon as chaos, Egypt as order. But then there's another way to do that, and that is you become your own God, because at some point you stop having order imposed upon you, and you start being able to order and manage yourself. And with every I did time in prison, and every one of those inmates that I saw could not impose order upon themselves. That was their fatal flaw. And it was like, once you can manage and order yourself, you become that Christ consciousness, that raw consciousness. You claim your divinity. You make that integration of the pure light and the divine spark, so that you can overthrow anything that dares to come against you.
Well said, man. That is freaking awesome. Let's take another quick break, and we'll wrap it up on the other side, because there's a couple of more things that I want to get into. I want to take a moment real quick, because you were talking about how things have changed and the way that we can provoke change. And a lot of people got together. Cannabis is legal in many, many, many different states. I remember as a kid, I was selling cannabis, and I was chastised for it all up and down the line. And now Cherie and I create Aya Life, which is a CBD oil infused with ayahuasca. It's a recipe that I got out of Hyperspace, and it's worked so well for people. If you go to Facebook and look up Aya Life CBD, people have just been leaving reviews because it's worked so well for them. And the same people that were chastising us back then for selling weed and things like that are now revering us for what we've created here with Aya Life, and how we're helping so many people out there. So things are shifting. They really are shifting, ladies and gentlemen. So on that note, Aya Life is ayalife.com. ayalife.com. Check it out. It helps to fund BTV and really rebalances the body. And we've got a pet formula, and it's ready to go. I just need to get my lazy ass off, back onto the computer. Well, I guess, it's kind of different now, because before I used to sit around on the computer all the time. Now I'm moving around everywhere, which is why I haven't put the pet formula up on the website, because I'm not at the computer anymore. So I guess I need to get my energized ass back down into the computer and work on the website a little bit, so we can get the pet formula out to everybody. But on that note, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We'll wrap it up with Nick Bravo right here on Beyond the Veil.
Open the front bay doors, please, now.
As expected, thought you might be running low. Please not the best plan. Thank you, I'm afraid you missed it all. Very wasted without comprehension. Your question depends on your understanding. What you hope to achieve by cutting hand over the water to achieve was to meet our makers. Give me a set. But the enemy is the first place. What do you think you'll be
capitalism has failed. The false civilization built by man has turned, like a monster destroying its creator. Science battles itself impotently against the barriers of the unknown. Only your consciousness knows the true path. You, the illuminated, can carry the understanding upwards towards the light. Only your consciousness can teach the children of men to live well, to die well, and in perfect measure, be born again, through the knowledge of virtue, compassion, love, and true understanding, as it is firmly raised beyond the veil.
All right, I see people in the chat room talking about IO Life. So here's what I want to do for everybody. And hopefully Mrs. Gia was listening. She said she was listening. If you are listening, can you create a coupon code? BTV. Create 2 coupon codes, one all uppercase and one all lowercase, for 10% off. So we can offer people 10% off who are in the chat room right now. And we'll keep this coupon code going for the next couple of days so the people in the archives can get it. And that's IOLife, AYALife.com. But give Mrs. Gio a little time to set it up. Hopefully she'll get it set up here in a few moments. I see her in the chat room, so I think she got the message loud and clear. So let's get back to Nick Bravo. You know what? I should have... This freaking virus, man, it's pissing me off. I should have blown my nose during the break. So we're going to go to Nick Bravo. Nick, can you take us away real quick so I can take care of all this crap that's in my nose?
Yeah. So a couple of encouraging words I want to say to everyone out there. First of all, people coming against you, just ignore them. They wouldn't if you didn't have something valuable to offer and make this world a better place, they wouldn't be coming after you like they are. They simply, they come after me all the time. If I was just nobody, they wouldn't be bothering with me at all. And you'll find that the people who come against you now, before you've accomplished what you're going to accomplish, after you've accomplished it, they're going to be your biggest fans. Don't trust them, but notice they'll be your biggest fans. And that's part of the problem we have in our society. We need to start supporting each other a lot more emotionally. We need to start actually being a lot more courageous and doing the work. Unify mind, body, and spirit. I'd like to answer any more questions that you guys might have. So,
awesome. I'm looking through the chat room here. Usually I have Cherie to go through the chat room and get all the questions there. I would open up the phone lines, except for people are using them on TFR. So I need to, we need to set up.
We don't want to turn this into a 3-hour show.
That's true. That's true. We're hitting the hour-and-a-half mark here in just a few moments. But Nick, I gotta just commend you, man. I mean, the level of gnosis that you've been unlocking is phenomenal. Everything you've put out on the show tonight has just been incredible. I've got to take it into the realm with me. I've got to really examine it 360 degrees. But as you're saying it, the way you're speaking, I can tell you're speaking from the heart. It's really resonating. So I have to say, well done, man. When is your next Aya session planned, or are you still digesting this one?
I don't know. I might take a while. I've got other things in the real world, in this 3D thing that I need to get dealt with. I am kind of concerned with. I've got one of my narcissists, one of my trolls on the 6th. He is. I've gotten like another court thing for that because the guy is. It's a whole thing. I told Sherry about it. The guy is basically human scum. I got to see what happens after that.
Well, everything's gonna work out well. That's what I'm picking up.
I know. Logically, I know that. It's the thing of it is we have to, and this goes back to mind, body, and spirit. We've got to develop that emotional maturity because so many of us, we have the intelligence, but we don't have the emotional maturity. We don't have the courage. We need to conquer like we need to conquer. And it doesn't mean being cold or cruel or shallow or malicious. It means having that power to defend each other and ourselves. And that's really because, we here at the BTV Beyond the Veil family, we're a tribe. We literally are a tribe. It's like, 2014, I was, it's like I got out of prison. I was like, I need my tribe. Where's my tribe? And it's like, this is my tribe. You guys are my tribe. And it's like
it really is. The only reason we don't use the word tribe is because I don't want to step on Frank's toes, because that's what he uses,
I get it.
And so, that's the only reason we don't use it. But that's exactly what it is, though, man. Yeah. I was feeling like shit the other day, and I was like, we got to do a show because we got to be with our tribe, we got to be with our people, and the energy that we create. Everybody in the chat room, there's so many people just sharing gnosis and understanding, and the callers calling into the show. We create an energy field. And we have to, from what I'm gathering, protect that energy field and control that energy field, because that energy field is something of value to malevolent beings.
Yeah. Well, and we all we're a lot more powerful than we realize. And that's the thing. It's like so many of us, and I know I speak for a lot of people who aren't even awake yet. It's like the society, the way it is set up, does everything it can to try to make a person doubt who they are, feel helpless, feel powerless, look for a savior. When you start to develop the power within yourself, when you start to have that Christ consciousness, when you start to grow and mature, there's nothing that can stop you. You just have to remember who you are. And it's easy to forget. It's so easy to forget. And it's just that we need people around us who are healthy, happy individuals who are awake to remind us on occasion who we are.
That's very true. It's nice to be around like-minded people, and it's funny because all of my closest friends are hundreds of miles away. And the people around, there's some conscious people around, but for the most part, we're all connected, all like worldwide. It's phenomenal. And technology has done this. We couldn't do this 20 years ago, much less 40 years ago, 50 years ago, any of that. But at the same time, the technology can destroy us too if we don't harness the power and balance it. As above, so below. It's the same with our energy field. If we don't control our energy field, somebody else will control it or suck it dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to say this too. You mentioned about the problems that you're having with that other person and all this.
Yeah.
I think what you'll find is that as your frequency starts to rise, you move out of the frequency of all of the court system, of the police system, of all of that. I remember back in 2010, 2011, no, actually before that, 2009, 2010, we were living in Dallas. I was getting pulled over like every two freaking weeks, man. It was incredible. The cops were there waiting to pull whoever they could over. And it was constant interaction with the fucking police, man. It was horrible. Yeah. But then what happened is I started to raise my frequency, and interaction with government or any of those entities, it started to get less and less. And any interaction that I have now is almost like kind of like Jedi mind trick. Like, hey, why'd you pull me over? You know what? I really don't know. Have a nice day. All right, take care. It doesn't go exactly like that, but energetically, that's pretty much what's going on. So I think you'll find that as the frequency raises, you'll start to move away from those frequencies.
I've had some of these guys, some of these narcissists, some of these I hate to say it, I'm a targeted individual. I'm not a victim, but I'm a targeted individual. I've had FBI show up at my door. I've had sheriffs show up at my door, and it's like, all I do is show them some of the garbage online about me, and I'm just like, and they laugh. They're like, oh yeah, we get it. This is trolling, blah blah blah. It's like they're like, you're harmless. And it's like, even when I was in prison, it's like everybody around me knew that I was like, they're like, yeah, you're one of the good guys. Why are you here? And it's like, I was just like, oh, okay. I don't know why I'm here, but oh well. But the nonprofit that I'm going to start is basically for the reentry and rehabilitation of felons. I don't have the paperwork done yet, but I'm working on it. A lot of these guys are illiterate. A lot of the prison population is illiterate. A lot of them have low self-control, low IQ. We really need to start healing these people, especially nonviolent, especially drug offenders. The thing of it is every individual, every time you make somebody aware of their own power and teach them how to reclaim their power, you're stealing another soul from the AI. You're stealing it from them. And that's the best revenge. You don't need to go do something stupid and violent. That's what it wants you to do. What you want to do is you want to be mature, you want to be strategic, you want to know, you want to have all your ducks in a row, and then you want to rob the AI of every ounce of energy and sustenance that it desires. You want it to starve to death. And it's about time we start starving it to death.
Wow. Well said, man. Any websites, anything like that you want to plug? What about your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel, it's kind of hard to find. I think if you type in Heart of the Rebel, you might be able to find it. There's so many troll channels and troll videos. So it's like, I tried being a comedian. There's a lot of funny stuff. There's a lot of goofy stuff. But if you go to Heart of the Rebel, my channel name is either Heart of the Rebel or Nick Bravo, either one. You should be able to find it. But I am going to be trying to do more videos, trying to do it one every day on just mental health, marijuana legalization, that kind of thing. I need to really get my brand out there, and I think that's really what it is. Because I mean, my haters have proven that they want me to be quiet and silent, and it's like if they're coming up against you, like I mean, I'm a nobody. But if they're coming at me the way they are, it's like obviously they're scared of something. Obviously, they're scared of something.
We were in the same situation for many, many, many years, and it wasn't until these people were committed twice in 2 different states that it stopped. But there's very mentally disturbed people out there, and it just kind of comes with the territory. So what I say is the best revenge is living well. The best revenge is focusing on your work, rising into higher and higher and higher frequencies, and they will eventually wither away. I mean, that's the thing. You know, I don't know if you're doing this protective spell or not. I'm sure you are. I'm sure you have your own protective spells, but I've talked about this bubble that you create around you, energetic bubble. You create a reflection around it too, and it bounces the energy back. And usually with us, people sending negative energy, it bounces right back to them. They're like, oh, whoa, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. These people didn't. And it destroyed them. Like I feel kind of bad for the miserable situation that these people are in, but I didn't do it. I just sent the energy back to them that they sent to me. So, yeah.
And I've got to do that a lot more. It's difficult. I mean, it's like I mean, you know, yesterday I did the Aya trip because I mean, it's like I ended up spending a couple hours with my mother, and it's like she's an NPC and I care about her, but it's like it can be infuriating. And it was just like I got to tell you, I mean, it's like energy is a real thing. You have to have your shields up, and all too often, you know, people who are awake and aware, it's like we get into these situations where just emotionally we're just knocked down and we don't get back up for a while. And we need to keep strong and healthy mind, body, spirit. Again, I'm going to plug, you know, Franz Barton's initiation into hermetics. He's got another one on evocation with entities and whatnot. The thing of it is the things in the abyss, they're more than willing to do the work for you if you know how to master them. But then again, it's like you have to be willing to be the master. And do so in a loving, compassionate way. You have to be the authority, the benevolent authority, not the dictator, not the asshole, but the benevolent authority. You have to be the father. You have to be the mother. You have to be that master of your own energy body, your own soul. You have to do that, or else they're going to run roughshod over you. And it's not that, you know, these entities in the abyss, these chaos creatures, they're not doing it to be evil or whatever. They're just doing what they do, like a cat or a dog or a wolf or any other animal does. It's up to you as the individual, as the human being, as one who has achieved the initiation, passed through the initiation of the birth canal and become upon this earth. It's up to you to be the one to create a new world. And all too often people just don't want to do that because they'd rather watch their Netflix and eat their Doritos and just do all their nonsense.
Well said, man. Awesome. Awesome. We have a couple of questions in the chat that are a little bit off topic, but one that kind of, I know lately that you've been getting yourself ready to find that twin flame. You're preparing yourself, doing all of that. Somebody asked in the chat, and I guess they asked last week, but do archons work extra hard to keep twins apart? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Because the thing of it is, if a man and a woman get together and they can support each other, it's harder to knock either one of them down because they've got that support system. And yeah, they want to keep me away from, I mean, I almost feel like I don't want to tell any stories, but it's like I have a few stories. It's like one girl I asked out for coffee, and she said no. And the next day, I found out she started spreading lies about me, saying all kinds of horrible things about me, all this other stuff, to the point where two of our guy friends wanted to beat the shit out of me. And I was like, all I did was ask her out for coffee. There was another one.
Well, obviously she wasn't your twin flame.
Obviously. Well, see, the thing of it is, and I asked the entities yesterday, I was like, what the hell, what's going on? And they were like, well, you need to find a woman who is, connected to her own darkness. And it's like, that's very true. But I also need to connect to mine. I also need to be the fullest potential of myself, and she needs to be the fullest potential of herself, and we can grow together. But at the same time, maybe in this lifetime I'm supposed to be single. I don't know. I mean, I certainly have enough. If I had things to do, if I was constantly busy doing political stuff or running a nonprofit or doing something, I would worry less about it. But I definitely think a lot of people are kept apart. But you see, it's constantly the archons are doing everything they can to divide and conquer. It's like it's just insane. And part of the problem is, if you look at history, right, the Weimar Republic before Nazi Germany, the Weimar Republic was going through the same thing that America is going through now. It led to the Nazis. What's going to happen after 2024? It's like, holy shit, you know what, 2030, are we going to have a new Hitler, a new Fourth Reich, the authoritarianism? You look at fascism and communism, it's both authoritarianism. It's not free, independent thinking. And you already see these businesses like Google and YouTube and whatever, Twitter, Facebook, they're censoring people. They're doing everything they can to censor and deplatform people. It's like, it's authoritarianism. Archons are authoritarianism. It's like, it's the same friggin' battle plan that they used last century. And it's like there's so few people aware of that. It's like, doesn't this seem a little familiar? Because if you read the history of the Weimar Republic before World War I, it was crazy. You had transsexuals, you had millions of immigrants, you had escalating debt, you had just craziness. The drug addiction was through the roof. All this stuff was through the roof. And, we're a little bit more technologically advanced, but we're going through the same problems. And I'm not saying those people are bad or we shouldn't accept those people, but it's just that when you get to a point of sheer chaos, the problem is most people want to go to it's the pendulum swing. So they have nothing but chaos. They look for order, but instead of just having a little bit, they end up turning into, the police state. And so it's just this constant give and take. They don't want to stay in the middle because either one, if you're on either extreme, you can seize power. If you're in the middle, you're letting people live their lives, you're letting people govern themselves, and you're being libertarian about it, and you're letting people be happy. We don't have that now. Now it feels like we've got two authoritarian groups, whether it's nationalists and leftists, vying for power. just like the communists and the Nazis were vying for power in early Germany's history. So it's like history's just repeating itself.
That's very true. I want to take a minute to thank Sandpaper and Ricardo for donating. Sandpaper sent a question that he wants your opinion on. And I want to get to this here in just a moment. But I do want to address the twin flame thing. So the twin flame thing, you have to get your own frequency first.
Oh, yeah.
I'm speaking to the audience here. You already know all this. But you have to get your frequency ready first. You have to do the work. But then the thing is, though, a twin flame relationship is not all fun and games. A twin flame relationship is the most challenging relationship you'll ever have. And as far as archonic attacks, Cherie and I are constantly under archonic attacks, especially during the first few years. I mean, there were a lot of elements that were really trying to stop this union. And I mean, even it's things going on in our own minds. I mean, we almost split up after we got back from Egypt because we're like, okay, well, our work's done here. You know, you need to go on this path, I need to go on that path, and that's that. But again, that was archonic influence to try to keep us from doing what we needed to do next. And it's been 10 years now that we've broken up probably 3,000 times in the last 10 years. We never actually do, but it's like, all right, that's it, we're done, let's go. But you're under constant attack during that, and you have to be able to withstand all of that. So there's a lot more to the twin flame relationship. I mean, I can sit here and tell people about all the good things about the twin flames, but everybody already knows all that. You've got to be aware of all the seemingly negative things so you can withstand them, so you can be prepared for them. So just a caveat out there for everybody. Sandpaper asked, what does Nick think about the heart's electromagnetic field that it creates, and how our other emotions directly affect our inner and outer worlds?
The heart is the engine. It's the engine. It is the divine spark is the gasoline. The consciousness, the pure light, is the navigation system. This is interesting because I was like relating a lot of this stuff to cars earlier. The pure light consciousness is the car. The divine spark energy is the gasoline. The heart is the engine. It's like if your heart's not working, you've got to have that electromagnetism. And that electromagnetism is the union of dark and light, because you've got the electrical. The electrical is what most people think of angelic. The magnetism is what they think of as the demonic. You've got to integrate those two and have them function appropriately so that they can be a conduit for what you want to create in the world. And unfortunately, a lot of people's minds have been hijacked so that they're constantly in a state of fear. They've got that cortisol going in their head. They're constantly in a state of stress, fear, anxiety, anguish, etc. And so they can't get anything done because they're in that state. But yeah, the heart is the emotional and is basically the engine. Now, your stomach also has enough nerves and neurons or whatever that it's, some scientists have called it a second brain. So it really is about the integration of the whole thing.
Awesome. We have another question. Back to the transhumanism, technocracy thing. I wanted to make a couple of points about that. We are moving towards a transhumanistic type of technocracy. I mean, you mentioned Google censoring everybody, and they're really going after everybody now. At first, I was like, well, maybe they're just doing what's best for business. This was a couple of years ago when they demonetized a lot of the quote-unquote race and hate and, you know, things like that. But now they're going after anti-vaccine videos, 9/11 videos, flat Earth videos, anything that makes people think outside of the box. And I'm not saying that these analyses are right or wrong, but the fact that they're making people think outside of the box is what the most important thing is. And I learned something the other day that they actually have two different types of vaccines. They have one for the rich people and one for the poor people. So they actually have vaccines that work, which is it was a chilling revelation to come across. But Agenda 21, transhumanism, all that stuff. We had a little disagreement with somebody in the group earlier about veganism, and you know, my perspective is that it comes from Agenda 21. That's exactly what they want to do. 1984 Orwell's. They used to give them the fake meat. I think that at least the way the agenda is being pushed is for Agenda 21. But with that also comes transhumanism, merging with the machines, et cetera, et cetera. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously, the people in power will never give up their filet mignon. That's just a given. As far as this goes back to mining the divine spark. What you want is you want workers who live a long time, will continue mining, not get sick or anything. So you might have consciousness downloaded into machines, but those are going to be the people in power. Those are going to be the people who continue feeding on other people. Because the thing of it is there is a lot of people who have sold their souls to the Anunnaki because they think, they think a lot of things, but it's just they've given up and they figure it's better to be a master. It's better to be king in hell than it is to be a servant in heaven, so to speak. And so there's going to be a lot of people becoming cyborgs. I mean, I'm all, if somebody needs a prosthetic, that's fine. If they need
I feel the same way. We should be using technology to help people regain lost abilities, lost limbs, things like that. I have no problem with that. It's the brain chip.
The problem is they're going to try to download human consciousness into an artificial body. That's the problem. Because what they want to do, again, to the Anunnaki, consciousness is a byproduct. The divine spark is what they want.
Oh, right? So disconnecting the consciousness from the divine spark through technology to be able to better harvest it.
Well, for example, right, in the early 1900s, nobody ate bacon, but they got so tired of wasting this pig meat that they said, how can we sell this? It's just like they put these chemical companies, they have fluoride as a byproduct, and now these companies buy it to put in water. It's like they're always looking for a way to profit off the stuff that they can't use. So they figure we'll use the consciousness to mine the divine spark. So they will still be flesh and blood humans, have the divine spark, low intelligence, low IQ, very sickly, short lifespan, and then you're going to have these people whose consciousness has been so perverted, but they're not going to have the divine spark. So they're going to be amoral, and they'll just continue to serve the Anunnaki. But they're going to keep it because it's like if you're a fur trapper, right? Okay, you've got this animal, you've got its pelt. Well, now what are you going to do with the meat? Okay, we're using the meat. Now what are we going to do with the bones or the guts or they're trying to use every part of that dark matter that they can. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, I mean, bacon and eggs, people didn't eat bacon and eggs until the pork industry decided to put out campaigns about bacon and eggs for breakfast, sausage and eggs for breakfast. Milk. Yeah. They're finding out now that drinking cow's milk regularly actually does the opposite of what they've told us. They said it strengthens bones and does all this. It weakens the bones. It weakens the body to drink milk all the time. It was a campaign by the milk industry to sell more milk.
Well, and it's like with all the meat. I mean, it's like
remember margarine? Hold on, margarine. Remember they used to tell us margarine was the best thing in the world and all this? They're finding out it does the opposite. Butter's actually good for you. Cholesterol is actually good for you. It's completely backwards.
Well, and they took out, in the early 1900s, they took out the sugar, they took out the fat, and they started putting sugar. And it's like we have it with the obesity problem and everything else. It's not the fat that's not made. Fat does not make you fat. What makes you fat is the sugar.
Yeah.
And it's like people didn't realize. People just, if it tastes good, they're going to fucking eat it, because most people, their consciousness is so low that they're not much more than animals. And
it's more addictive than cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
Sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Yeah. And it's in everything. Yeah.
And then at the same time, it's like, well, the question is, are you your brother's keeper? Well, to a certain degree. I mean, there's entities in the dark matter that they want to know what being human is like. They want to explore what being a human is. That's why they possess humans. That's why they interact with humans. They want to know what that is. They want to inhabit a body, pass through the birth canal, experience this physical reality, even if it's painful, because it's exciting to them, it's interesting to them, etc. It's order to them. That's why they actually like doing the repetitive things, because it's an experience of order. It's an experience to them. The problem is obviously if the consciousness gives itself over to them, because then it's just you've got to put them into order. They need that order. They don't have it without you doing it. But yeah, it's like I kind of forgot the first question. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. We have a few coming in here in the chat. We'll keep it going for maybe another 10 minutes. So if you guys want to drop a few questions, definitely do. Shawnee, she said, what are your opinions on clairvoyance? No, clairaudience. I don't know if clairaudience, I'm not familiar with that term. Once in a while, I get a word drop, and it is Hebraic, and other times it's an ancient word or subject that I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I've had clairaudience once or twice, and it's usually I just tell it to shut up, and it's like if it's not going to be clear, if it's not going to be straight up and say, hey, this is what, it's like just go away. I don't want to bother with you. It's because a lot of it is just these entities, they're having fun. They're tricksters. They're low consciousness, low intelligence. They're just it's like for them, it's like throwing a rock into a pond and watching the ripples. They want to see if they can have an effect on physical reality. I've only experienced it once or twice, and I tell the entities, knock it off. I'm not interested.
Yeah, my thoughts are that we're bombarded by frequencies all the time. Mm-hmm. That's why I always talk about raw consciousness. I always talk about getting gnosis from within, not external sources, because you never know. I mean, there could be some information that's floating around externally that's great information, but the only information that I trust 100% is what comes from inside. And it's not only in the etherical realm. There are Gwen towers that operate on the frequency of the brain, and they can send messages and signals and suggestions through the Gwen towers. Now, people have all this apprehension towards 5G. I haven't looked into 5G enough to really understand what people are so apprehensive about, but I mean, we're going to have to sustain ourselves in an environment with 5G because we're not going to stop it. It's going to be rolled out. The only thing we can do is understand the technology to the point to where we can overcome whatever external interference that there is. But I hear that 5G also operates in the same brain wavelength as the human brain. You have these auditory weapons that can be used to send messages and suggestions. So not only do we have to deal with archonic influence from the outside, but also technological influence too.
Yeah, I'm watching some of the questions go by. Yes, I am a fan of the show Supernatural. They actually have some of the stuff right, correct? Yeah, it's as far as some of those words, the word Maharat, I remember reading it somewhere, I forget where. Just, I mean, if you see a word, just look it up. I mean, again, a lot of these things, they're just, it's something trying to get a reaction. Don't react to it.
Let me jump in about M's comment. She said, don't open up the Kundalini. It's an evil thing. My mother did it and she went insane. And then somebody else said, I had a similar experience, or her mother had a similar experience or something like that. With the Kundalini, I've come to understand the energy better based on the CIA document that we covered, which basically said that and you can go through our archives and check it out. It was like a 4.5-hour show because we covered every aspect of this document. But the Kundalini is supposed to loop. I've never utilized the Kundalini energy. I've always just brought energy from inside out. But the Kundalini is supposed to loop. There's supposed to be a completion of the loop. The CIA document specifically talks about how when the Kundalini is not completed, it can leave you in a susceptible state. It's called like state 27 or something like that. Yeah, and hypnosis. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I have these 2 books, somewhat helpful on yoga, Kundalini, both by Arthur Avalon. it's like, I mean, I've taken hypnosis classes and stuff. I took hypnosis classes for like a few weeks. I actually freaked out everybody in class because I could not be hypnotized. They got free. I mean, it. Yeah,
I'm the same way. I can't be hypnotized. I want to be hypnotized because I have a couple of encounters with Greys that I'd really like to remember a little better. Nobody can do it.
Yeah, well, and these people acted in the same way that Christian fundamentalist would, call me, he's the devil, and it was just like, and it's just it was a weird thing.
Yeah. Back to the Kundalini thing. Other people are saying that their Kundalini awakening felt archonic. And you know what? I mean, really, I don't like to talk against the Kundalini and the chakras, because when I do, they're like, hey, wait a minute, I love my chakras. Well, they're all AI implants. I mean, every one of them are. Can you access higher realms with them? Sure, but they're AI implants at the end of the day. I mean,
well, and one has to wonder if they're just like circuits attached to the divine spark, because it's like that's really when I look at the chakras, I see like circuits, like little transformers or something plugged into a chip or a motherboard.
Me too. Cherie pointed out they're like strings on a puppet. And it can access the root chakra, they can access the crown chakra, all kinds of different waves and feelings and things like that to manipulate the consciousness. Yeah. And
the thing of it is you've got to be in control of them, or you can burn out, but again, you've got to be in control of it, and not in the fearful sense, but just let it flow, but then at the same time have control over it. I've seen way too many. I've seen way too many like New Age people, just like they get so into some of that nonsense that they just that they drive themselves crazy.
Yeah,
and it's just like, they keep trying to escape, but in a unhealthy way.
It seems to me like the chakra thing. It seems like Dumbo feathers. Like, okay, well, here's a Dumbo feather for you. I have never needed to utilize it. But then again, I think to myself, and maybe you can help me with this, Nick, I think to myself, what other tools can I provide for people that are apprehensive to psychedelics or ayahuasca? But I can't find anything that unlocks the gnosis like psychedelics and ayahuasca.
I would just suggest, find a good ritual thing. Because see, the thing of it is you read a lot of these occult books and whatnot, and it's just like the key to it is consistency. There's simple rituals that if you did them for like months on end, you'd get to the point where you'd be able to have what we call a psychedelic experience, or even like dreams or something like that. But the problem is most people, they want the consistency. They want the instant gratification. It's like, I mean, if you actually expend energy, whether it's a psychedelic trip or whether it's an occult ritual, if you complete it, if you do it correct, it's gonna make you feel physically wiped out. It's not gonna be this, pleasant experience necessarily. It's gonna make you feel exhausted by the end of it. But the thing of it is if you do something like this, initiation into hermetics, it works. A lot of that stuff works. And again, but it also goes back to the belief, because you can sit there and you can summon anything if you tap into that chaos, if you tap into the abyss, you can literally create. I mean, you could literally summon Bugs Bunny. You could literally summon Mickey Mouse. You can literally summon those entities.
It manifests from your mind. Yeah. I noticed that at the beginning of my ayahuasca experiences, if I was watching a TV show or if I was reading a book or doing something like that, they would appear in my ayahuasca experience because it's fresh in my consciousness. So we have to remove all of that and understand that we are actually manifesting. I mean, psychedelics means manifesting of the mind. I mean, it's a mind manifesting thing. But I think that goes for other spiritual practices too.
Yeah, so. And that's why it's like I want to make sure that what I was connecting to when it was saying, oh yeah, Enki's it's not an exploration vessel. It's a cargo ship, and you're the cargo, you're the gold it's trying to mine. It's like, okay, is there truth to that? Is it just something screwing with me? Is it? I mean, because it's like when it feels a little bit like possession. And when I let it speak through me. Oh, this is another thing. When I was under the trip, it showed me one of my past lives. And in the 1800s, I was, and I know it's a relative on my father's side. It was in England, and the guy basically went insane and died in an asylum. But apparently that was me, and apparently I was tapping into these other occult forces and whatnot. But, England in the 1800s, I mean, you're talking very, very restricted thinking, restricted speech, very, a very chaotic time, not very many, not many thinkers, just more of a primitive society. So it was rather interesting because there's part of me that did connect even then to these entities. So it's like, what's that about? I don't know. I've really never had any other past life experiences or whatnot, but this keeps coming up. And I mean, even as a child, sometimes I would slip into an English accent. I don't know why, but it's just, I do that. So it's very interesting what, if you're able to carry things over from a past life, it's very interesting sometimes what carries over.
This has been a fascinating discussion, Nick. I mean, absolutely amazing. And you know what? The number one thing that I respect about this discussion is everything you said at the end, which was, I'm still not sure. I'm looking at it from 360 degrees, et cetera, et cetera. Because here we are, two people with complete opposite views of a seemingly event that's taking place. And we're here discussing, trying to find the 360-degree view and trying to make sense of all of this. This has been the most perfect show that we've done in a long time, brother. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you want to get into, or should we wrap it up?
I can't think of anything else. I think you probably need to go pay some attention to the little twin. So
yeah, she needs to be fed.
Oh yeah,
and watered. All right. So, love you, brother. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You have a great night.
You too. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. All of you guys and gals in the chat room have been freaking amazing. Nick has been freaking amazing. It just keeps on getting better and better here at BTV. So I think it just goes to show. I mean, we've had a lot of guests on that have been like world-renowned authors and things like that. They don't bring as much to the table as each and every one of you do, as the callers do, as Nick just did. Frank brings a whole shit ton to the table too. I need to reconnect with Frank and get back into that frequency. And so, yeah, much more is coming up. And as soon as we can shake this bug, I'm going to start traveling a little bit more. I got the intuition, while you have this bug, do not travel, because whatever it is that's attached to you right now is going to be traveling up there with you. So I'm trying to shake this bug that has been world freaking wide. Everybody's got it, but it's okay. We're getting over it and getting out of that frequency. I've talked to a couple of people that's just hit today, and I'm like, shit. It's 2 weeks. Only lasts about 2 weeks. 3 days of it is brutal. The rest, you just feel like you got all the shit in your chest and your nose and things like that, and it's just expelling it. So you go through the 3 days of darkness, then you start expelling all the darkness. As above, so below. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be, and we'll see you even further beyond the veil. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, I don't have my end screen programmed. All right, let's do it like this.